The Formula One caravan is back, and the Dutch GP has some interesting stories that we ought to enjoy. From the weather forecast that could shake up the entire pecking order to new rules by the FIA to encourage a two-stop strategy. What does Zandvoort hold for us in one of its latest editions? And more importantly, how would the two title protagonists end up after the Dutch GP after Norris's statement? Formula One is finally back after a long 3-week break, and when we go to Zandvoort, there is one thing we always need to keep in mind: the rain. It seems like the weather conditions are going to be quite wet, with chances of rain being around 80% throughout the 3 days of racing near the North Sea. Of course, there will be variations in the wind speeds and the temperatures, with Saturday offering the highest wind speeds of 30 to 40 km/h, but overall, these conditions are always entertaining to have on a race weekend. They're bringing out the best out of the driver, but in order for that to happen, the FIA needs to let them race and not allow itself another shameful debacle like the one in Spa. It's highly likely to be different here because the expectations of rain are throughout the entire weekend. And in Spa, it was always expected that rain would stop. However, teams had a belief that they would race on the wet tarmac, which barely happened. Be that as it may, it would be a big pressure that the FIA would have to deal with and of course manage the expectations of the drivers and the fans in terms of how big an amount of rain is considered safe to race. It's not just the rain. When you have this combination of rain and wind, the visibility is nearly zero, and then it's highly likely that there will be delays in the entire process of racing. So that's the first thing that should keep us on our toes. But what about the rule change in general? Zandvoort is a track that is highly demanding on the tyres due to its high number of corners. But if the track temperatures are low, many would aim towards the one-stopper. This has been the safest pit stop strategy for a long period of time, and the FIA has had some tough times in trying to lure the teams into the two-stopper, which offers more drama and strategy. So for this year, along with Pirelli, a decision has been made to raise the speed limit in the pit stop from 60 to 80 km/h. When talking about it in an official statement regarding this rule change, Pirelli wrote, "A further step in this direction stems from the FIA's decision to increase the pit lane speed limit from 60 to 80 km/h, thus reducing the time taken for a pit stop." According to simulations provided by the teams, the one stop is still quickest, partly because overtaking is notoriously difficult at Zandvoort, with very few straights apart from the main one, combined with the fact the whole track is quite narrow. The sad part about Zandvoort is that this is one of the last editions of the race. After 2026, the track's contract with Phone ends due to financial reasonings, but it's highly likely that the simple growth of phone cars has made it a bit difficult to race here. Although traditional circuits are slowly but surely vanishing, I don't think there is anything we can do in order to stop that. What we can do when it comes to Zandvoort is expect some action from NASCAR and IndyCar 500, competitions that have shown interest in racing here if they were to visit Europe. But let's be a little bit more optimistic about the Dutch GP. They have a home hero to cheer, and one that's won 3 times from 4 tries since the return of the circuit back in 2021. The situation of Verstappen and Red Bull, however, is not looking very optimistic as of now. The McLarens are far ahead, and the upgrades on the RB21 are simply not working. It also puts the second seat in danger because now the team finds itself in a very difficult position. They need to score points with both of their cars in order to not fall down in the midfield. I don't think Max is enough to keep Red Bull in the top 3, which can be seen from the current standings. And if this trend continues in 2026, then we will have tons of conversations about Max's future with the Austrian squad. Nevertheless, there is a big self-confidence boost in Lando Norris that he's in the best form he's ever been in so far. And with him winning 3 of the last 4 races, I do strongly believe that the momentum is on his side. Of course, the conditions in Zandvoort are poised to make the race a bit more difficult for him, but it's going to be the same for everyone. Calm seas never made a skilled sailor, so Norris needs to prove that he has the championship mentality in himself. But the Monegasque did take pole position in Hungary. Had it not been for the car issues, he would have likely scored a podium or maybe even fought for the race win, which is why Stella believes that we're going to see a different version of Ferrari in the remainder of the season. Adding further on this, Andrea said, "I'm not surprised by Ferrari's pole position in Hungary because they have been competitive over the last few races. They were competitive in the dry in Silverstone, and they were competitive in Belgium. I think they are going to be a contender for victories for the remainder of the season. Definitely anytime we are racing for the second part of the season, we would have to take into account that in qualifying and in the race, we would have to deal with Ferrari. And the never-ending question, what about the second seat of Red Bull? Yuki Tsunoda will be under pressure yet again, as he knows that drivers like Hajar Lawson and even Alex Palou are now ready to take his seat if he fails to improve in 2025. Although the general belief is that he is going to be replaced after 2025, Laurent Mekies decided to put a stop to these talks and set the priorities straight. The goal is to give Yuki what he needs in order to rediscover his form with Red Bull. If he fails to do that, then Red Bull are going to look at their options. And when elaborating further on this, the newly appointed team principal of Red Bull said the priority is to give Yuki what he needs to perform. With regard to the second seat, that's where the priority is. It's what the team is concentrated on. They have been trying that for a number of races now. We are trying to find ways together to make a further step. Spa was very positive. Certainly from that perspective, Hungary was a tricky weekend overall. So, it's probably a bit more difficult to judge, but there is no reason why Yuki's performance cannot be what we have seen in the past.